time. So, kids came in the room, and I said, well, really glad to see you guys. I said, I got the problem of explaining to you why it's important that you pay attention to politics. And they weren't yawning yet. And I said, I think maybe the best way to start this is to help you understand that you were born into the greatest country in the world for a simple reason. By the very fact you were born American, you're on the board of directors. You are on the board of directors of the largest corporation in the entire world called the United States.
That's right.
And let me tell you something about that. You're doing a pathetic job. You are miserable. You should be ashamed of yourself. And probably your aunts and uncles are doing the same miserable, pathetic job. And probably your mom and dad are too. You need to go home and find out about this. And maybe your older brothers and sisters. Because let me tell you something. You're on the board of directors. You don't know anything about your company. You don't even know where it's located. You don't know what its product is. You don't know what the sales plan is. You don't know what the revenue, the expenses. You don't know. You got a bunch of CEOs, CFO guys, and they are robbing you blind, and you haven't even got a clue. And yet you've been given this to be on the board of directors. I said, let me tell you how really bad you've let this get. How old are you? I'm 16. How old are you? 15. How old are you? 19. How old are you? 17. I said, okay, great. Average age is 16. Does anybody know generally how much revenue our corporation takes in every year as a percent of the gross national product? 19%. That is the long-term average, according to what's called Heller's Law. Doesn't matter whether the tax rate goes up or down, and that moves a little bit, but not a whole bunch. Long-term average, the United States takes in about 19% of the GNP in actual receipts. Anybody know what we're spending? I said the ceiling has been 24% under this president. Right now it's 21%. So as you're sitting here, we're spending more money than we're going to take in, and we're getting deeper in the hole right while you're munching your sandwich. Now let me explain why you should care about this. If we're spending 21 and we're taking in 19, it's getting worse and worse. So in order to get back to even keel, we got to get back to 19. And in order to start paying back all this, we got to get down to 16. How do you get to 16? I mean, can we make a few cuts in the Department of Defense and get there? Let me explain something to you. So you get this. We can cut out the whole Department of Defense. Be totally defenseless. No Marines, no Air Corps, no Navy, no SEALs, no nothing. And it won't even get it to 19. So we're going to have to cut out a whole lot. I mean a whole lot. But let's assume we do just get rid of the Army and the Navy and all of that. And then we get rid of a whole lot more. And we get down to 16. Average age in this room is 16 years old. Do you know how long it'll take to pay off the debt that exists right this minute? Do you know how old you will be? 51 and a half. And they went, oh God, that's dead. I said, bingo. That's how bad it is, and you've let it get there. Do I have your attention? Boy, I had their attention. I had their attention. So I said, I think what we really need to do here, guys, is we need to have a little political 101. We need to understand a few things, because there was a recent survey by millennials, and they were to name their top 3 aspirations for their country and their future. And they answered liberty, freedom, prosperity, and certainty. I said, let me explain something to you. You're on a path to get rid of all of those in a big hurry. only certainty you're going to have is bankruptcy. So I then said, so before today, how interested were you in politics? 1 to 10. And I said, be honest. The average in the room was 1.9. So I said, well, let me explain then why this matters. The first thing I did was I threw up for them my resume. And I'm going to tell you why I did this. Born and raised in Midland, Texas, I attended Duke University. I got a BA degree in political science, Middle East, Germany, 1925 to 45. After Duke, I went to Capitol Hill, was there for a little while, couldn't stand Washington. Then I got hired by some folks and got involved in a deal in Saudi Arabia and Europe and the South Pacific, went back and forth for a couple of years, and went to the Harvard Business School, got an MBA, did a study for NASA while I was there. And then I left there and I came back to Midland. I got oil and gas exploration, did some commercial real estate development, and then after some discussions with the White House, principally as a result of this connection, plus some connections back from here, I ended up doing some semiconductor work on the space shuttle for the Star Wars program, etc. That ended pretty much when George H.W. Bush shut down a lot of that whole advanced research for Star Wars, and ended up with the Texas Embassy Canteen in London for 18 years. I did some M&A with Capital Alliance. I became the CFO for Residential Broadband Corporation. We did most advanced broadband around. I mean, if you're taking Fios or you're taking AT&T's UVerse, you're getting technology that we developed in 2000, and you're violating every patent we filed, but we had no ability to protect it. So Cisco owns those patents. And then since then, I've been an independent business consultant because I know every business in the world. And I still do some oil and gas, and I did the Park City Preston Hollow Leadership Forum. Now, why does this matter? This matters because all these people who are telling you as a 16 and 17-year-old you need to figure out what you want to do are full of it. This is a country of incredible opportunity. And if you look at this complete wreck of a resume that has no logical thread through it except one. When I started studying these, they eventually led me here. When I worked here, it created some relationships in the intelligence world, in Washington, etc., that eventually got me here, partly because I also knew a lot about the Middle East. Now, none of this was planned. None of this was planned. I took the first course in the Middle East because I just wanted to figure out, what had happened to the oil price in '73. This I got involved in because I was drinking beer in the right bar at the right time. Really. Absolute truth. And so all of these things work back and forth, and they all happen. But they don't happen in societies where an elite say, we're going to psychographic profile you and tell you you are going to be an accountant, like this new education bill wants to do. You don't create wealth, you don't create prosperity, you don't create fulfillment from a psychographic profiling test of the United States government. This is America, and this is where people are free to try to do whatever they want to do, pursue their dreams, and do what they want to do. And by the way, it's going away from you. Well, they didn't really like the sound of that going away from you stuff. I said, well, let me show you what this is about. First, I said you need to understand the model of governments. Now, we did a whole session on this. Some of you may remember this. It's been quite a while. But throughout history, for the most part, this has been the model. There was God. Then there was the king or the church, oligarchies. And then there were the subjects down here. And you'll notice that the government comes between the subjects and God. In fact, they claimed they were the interpreters of what God was telling them to tell you to do. And by the way, if you don't, I got a bunch of guys with pickaxes here, and they're going to help you do it.
Yes.
That has been the model throughout history for almost everything. But then something weird happened. A guy named Jesus Christ showed up. Later on, we had founding fathers. Enlightenment happened, etc. And pretty soon this model evolved because suddenly people realized they could actually communicate directly with their Creator. And they had certain God-given rights. It didn't come from the king or the oligarch. And so they reordered things. And now you have the government and the church out down here somewhere, and these guys are the board of directors. And that's the model of the United States. And that's where all these 16, 17, 18-year-olds need to understand, and most of them don't. And then you have to look at where the guys want to take us, and they want to go right back. In essence, it's the same model, except now we don't even have to mess with God. Socialism is a godless system that says man is perfectible with his own brain if you just let the elites tell everybody else what to do, and you psychographic profile them, and you tell them this is what you're going to do. And it's all about, of course, equality. It's about removing everybody's resume like mine and saying, no, you're just going to be a clerk. It's a prescription for poverty. But that's what both those are. So then we said, well, this is the traditional understanding that you guys probably have about politics. You end up with what we call a far left and a far right. Here's the far right, here's the far left, and in the middle here is the supposed area of moderates. And the far left is often defined as, communists or socialists or Marxists or whatever. And the far right over here are the fascists. And I said, now is this pretty much what you guys understand? And yeah. I said, well, this is BS. This is total BS. Because in fact, these guys and these guys believe the exact same thing. Like this. So, if we're really going to redraw this, we need to grab this end of the line and this end of the line so that these guys are together and they meet down here at the bottom. We pull this edge down, if you could imagine. So all the socialists and the Marxists and the fascists and the kings monarchy, they're all down here. I said, in fact, there's another group that belongs down here. Hannah.
What?
Right. What? Everybody in that room knew what Panem was. Because you see, that's the name of the country for the Hunger Games. And every kid in that room turned white.
Say that. Would you spell it for us, Russ? I mean, I've read the Hunger Games, but I forgot the term.
Panem. P-A-N-E-M. It was the name of the country that was in the Hunger Games. In fact, the Hunger Games is a perfect dystopian nightmare. It is the 1984 of this generation, and every kid has read it, and none of them have made the connection. We got to make that connection. I said, what you guys have to understand is that this is what your guys in Washington are creating for you.
That's right.
That's where they're taking you. I said, now, what happened that was so unusual in our case is that the founding fathers said, we don't go with that. In fact, because we believe citizens are directly responsible to their God, we're going to build a government based on that. And we're going to have something called a constitution. And the Constitution is going to be a bulwark against these guys. This is going to be the walls of our castle that protects us from going there. And of course, as things went along, you ended up with sort of Democrats on this side and Republicans on this side. But they all basically believed in the Constitution. And I said it was dedicated to a very simple proposition. Free people are not equal. Societies aren't made great by free people that are equal. They can't be. By the same token, these guys say, well, no, it's really all about making everybody equal. And of course, to do that, they can't be free. And so, all of you guys that have in this little survey of millennials say you like liberty and freedom and prosperity, guess what? You say you also like socialism. Really? How's that going to work out for you? Well, I mean, synapses were going off all over the room at this point. But I said that's really the deal. That is really the deal. And we went through and filled in a few more things there so that eventually the box sort of ended up looking like this. I did take them because you'll see why in just a minute. I did take them through the idea that this Constitution is tied directly to something called the rule of law. That the rule of law really requires Christianity to create an agreed moral base and then a system of laws that reflect that moral base. Whereas down here you see it's a godless orientation, there is no moral base, and so there's the rule of man and there's the stormtroopers to enforce it all. Because the truth of the matter is that there cannot be any rule of law if the populace doesn't generally, voluntarily follow the law. The reason this experiment called the United States of America works is because all of us more or less kind of believe in the same moral code, and at least for until very recently, for the most part, our laws reflected that code, and we voluntarily sort of went along and agreed with it. And when we didn't, we tried to be tolerant. But when you end up with a moral base that begins to erode and corrode, then you end up with the rule of man and you end up with stormtroopers to enforce it because it doesn't reflect. Now, the nice thing is, 78%, depending on what survey you look at, but about 78 to 82% of all Americans still say that they're basically fundamentally Christian. Which is why I say if you like America, if you like freedom and liberty and prosperity, whether you think you're a Christian or not, you better hope the country remains that way. Because that's what produced what you like. And that got us to our next point. I said, we're going to have to hurry. I said, America has been called a shining city on a hill. Let's talk about what that ascent up the hill looks like. The shining city on a hill starts out with 6 commandments, the last 6 commandments. Those are the social commandments. This is the Judeo-Christian heritage that you sometimes hear. These kids had heard of it. Didn't know exactly what it was, but it was a vague term that they thought their parents should do something about it. Thou shalt not murder. Thou shalt not lie, bear false witness, commit adultery or any other act of abomination like that. Shall not covet, etc., etc., etc. Those are the social commandments. Those are how we're all to live and interact with each other. That's the first step if you want to go up to the shining city on the hill. The next step, after the commandment, is that they form a common moral code, if you were. This moral base we keep talking about. Because we all kind of came from the same place and agreed on those 6, they form the fundamental moral code that we all just have programmed in and walk around with. And because we have that moral code, we can come up to the next step, which is the rule of law, and we can make it work because we voluntarily go on with it. And when you have all this, then you have a great deal of liberty and freedom. And we all know that when you have a lot of liberty and freedom, you let guys with resumes like mine run around relatively unsupervised. And we do all kinds of stuff, and a lot of it's good. A lot of it helps people, and employs people, and makes money, and all that kind of stuff. And that produces prosperity. So we're coming up to the shining city on the hill, and we finally get there. Because at the top of the hill, what really defines us is the prosperity that allows us and the freedom that allows us to be benevolent. We are the most benevolent nation in the world. We give more charitable money than all of the rest of the world combined. $352 billion in charitable giving last year. So this is what the shining city on the hill looks like. This is why people want to come here. I said, now let's talk about what the real problems and dangers are, because you kids are going to be confused about this. I said, if you want to topple this, what do? Well, you attack all of these foundational underpinnings. You want to understand why it's so important to have gay marriage? Here's why. Homosexuality is a sin. It's not the worst sin. It's not the only sin. The Bible doesn't tell you that there's 1 through 10. It just says there are 10 of them. We're all sinners. Every one of us. Homosexuals got their sins. I've got mine. You've got yours. We all kind of agree that as long as we repent, we forgive each other, and we go along. We're all fallen creatures. But here's the difference. When you start introducing homosexual marriage, now you're asking me to celebrate your sin. I don't ask you to celebrate my sin. I ask you to forgive it. I ask you to understand it and accept me, even though I am. I don't demand that by law you celebrate it. And that's one of the reasons why this SCOTUS decision is so dangerous. Because you see, when the rule of law no longer reflects the moral code, you have what the Washingtonians love to call cognitive dissonance. What that means is this doesn't work, this doesn't match up. I can't do both these things. So, you want to understand what's at the root of this whole gay marriage thing, it's to get this foundation eroded. I have gay friends. They actually are pretty much okay with my position about all this. My view is, if you guys want to contract with each other, that's just fine. state doesn't even need to be involved. You look at other things going on. If you look at the whole issue of politically correct, what is politically correct about? Well, politically correct is really all about denying truth. That's really what it is. It's to squelch free speech. It's to deny truth. It's to say, well, here's a perfect example. What do we all, and we've been sucked in by this, what do we all call welfare? We call it an entitlement. But it's not an entitlement. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a handout. An entitlement is Social Security. You put the money in for it. An entitlement is VA benefits. Those guys went out and sacrificed for that. Medicare, you paid for it. Those are entitlements. Welfare food stamps are handouts. And we need to start calling things what they are, even though the New York Times and our leadership in Washington doesn't like it. Because only when we start speaking truth will we ever start fixing the problem. And the funny part now is I'm looking at these kids and they're all beginning to nod. Wow, I hadn't thought about it this way before. This guy's a real loony. But really, whether it's the attack on God and Christianity that we see going on now, and that's going to get worse because the whole goal is to get rid of that moral code so that the rule of law can crumble and the rule of man and tyranny can come and take its place. That's really what the whole goal here is. Making law from the bench, that undermines the rule of law. Separating the law from the agreed moral base, that's what we've talked about. Amnesty is a perfect example. Amnesty is saying, well, if your intentions, if you really wanted to improve your life, and sure, you were illegal. Well, so was robbing banks, but we don't yet say that's okay. I could say, well, I was doing it for the right reasons. I wanted my family to have a better life. I don't think they're going to let me off. The whole idea of unconstitutional acts that this president is getting away with, and our Congress that has an obligation to stop and is sitting aside with the philosophy that we will do nothing until it is safe to say there is nothing left to do. That's really the strategy of our Republican leadership right now. Open borders. The whole idea there is to undermine American exceptionalism. Confuse colonizers and conquerors with immigrants. We talked about that before. There's a difference. A colonizer or conqueror is a person who comes here and they keep their own language, they all live together, they keep their social structures, they keep their religion, they keep everything, and they just keep making more of them until they're in a position to conquer. That's what we did when we came here and there was nothing but Indians in this country. Western Europe came here as colonizer conquerors. Spaniards came from Spain into South America. They did not want to assimilate with the Aztecs and the Incas. They merely wanted their gold. Those were colonizer conquerors. We see that today in Sharia, among some. What are immigrants? Well, immigrants are people who come here and they do want to assimilate. They do want to learn the language. They do want to get into the culture. I had a great conversation with a black guy the other day, and he says, I live up in Plano. He says, all the rest of my family, I'm getting family vacations and family reunions, and they gave me grief about I was uppity. I was living up in that white neighborhood. He said, you know what I told them? I said, no, what'd you tell them? He says, I said, I live up there because people don't shoot at each other every day. Really? That was his answer. He's assimilating. Welcome to America. So, the point point I was trying to make to these kids is that they need to think about this, they need to be engaged, they need to understand they have been given a unique gift, and they're on the board of directors, and they better start figuring it out, and they better go ask mom and dad about why they're not. And you know, as I say, the last chapter was, I got voted the best guy of the whole deal. All right, time is up. We're already over time. Thank you all very much. I'll be